This is Matt Rosen, and this is the Grit Mindset with me, your host, Matt Rosen. The mission of the Grit Mindset is to inspire and empower our listeners by delving deep into the journeys of those who have faced significant challenges and emerged stronger. Through authentic conversations, we uncover the mindsets, strategies, and lessons that have propelled these individuals to overcome adversity and achieve success. My aim is to provide actionable insights and real-world advice to help our listeners cultivate their own grit and navigate their personal and professional lives with confidence and resilience. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Grit Mindset. I'm Matt Rosen, your host. Here with me, I've got an awesome guest. His name is Nate Wisan. He is the Chief of Staff at the Special Operations Association of America. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. That is a mouthful. Yeah. I feel bad whenever I hear somebody say it.
Just call it SOAA.
Just call it SOAA. Yeah. I always try to go with the acronym. The full thing is, it's long.
Yeah.
It's just long.
Well, we've had your co-founders here, both Daniel and Jeremy, in past episodes. It's great to have you. Tell us, though, for those who haven't listened, about the organization, what it's about, what you do there. That'd be great.
Yeah. I'll back up for the need, and then I'll talk about the organization.
Perfect.
So I was sitting down in DC a few months ago, and I heard somebody say something that really, for me, gelled why SOAA exists. And he said, if you don't have advocacy at the federal level, you don't exist.
Yeah.
And that's not because politicians don't want to hear your cause. They're just so busy, they don't get to hear your cause. And that's why SOAA exists. In the special operations sphere of things, nobody was really saying, hey, Congress, hey, President, hey, federal lawmakers, these people have a voice and they need to be heard, because the ground truth we're learning on the battlefield or deployed overseas needs to get codified into U.S. law. We need to take this experience and not lose it, because people are paying with it in sweat and blood sometimes. So that's why SOAA exists. We exist as the premier, and to my knowledge, the only organization that specifically focused on taking all the things we learned from our SOF veterans and continue to learn, and then carrying the water on that to Congress and saying, let's incorporate this into U.S. law to keep America safe.
Yeah, and how many special operators are there, if you had to guess?
Overall, we're talking tens of thousands between the Green Berets, which is the largest special operations component. You have Navy SEALs, you have MARSOC, you have the Rangers, you have the PJs, SEALs special boat drivers. So overall, we're well north of 60,000. So It's a sizable population of truly elite warriors.
Yeah. Well, it's an awesome organization. I'm glad to be a sponsor of it. And what I'd love to hear is just a little bit about your personal story and what caused you to want to get involved with this organization and serve the country.
Yeah, of course. Grew up in a rural upbringing, which is pretty typical for many special operators, exposed to the wild at a young age. My dad's from the Bronx, so not a outdoor background kind of guy. But growing up in Northern California, after he and my mom migrated to California, loved nature. And I don't know where the desire to serve first came from, but as most kids who end up in special operations, I remember taking cold showers and cold baths, wanting to be a Navy SEAL.
By choice.
by choice. And I couldn't, it's kind of that initial exposure to grit early on.
You had a hot water heater.
Yeah, we did. We had hot water. And somehow by choice in Northern California, where it gets quite cold, where I grew up, I was taking cold baths and cold showers because I thought that's what it took to be a Navy SEAL. Even though I don't even remember, I didn't watch the Charlie Sheen movie back then. I don't know where I even heard about Navy SEAls. Their marketing is just so good.
Yeah.
But back, going back quite a few decades into Northern California, I'm taking cold showers, and somehow in my childhood mind, that equates to being elite in the military. And then fast forward, I'm 17 years old. I grew up, we didn't have a lot of money, a lot of love, but not a lot of money. 6 kids in my family. I'm the second oldest. So a lot of mouths to feed. And my dad worked really hard, but they're just...
What did he do?
He's an accountant still to this day. Yeah. And a lot of mouths to feed, but not a lot of income coming in. And I had heard that there was a camp, a summer camp for kids. And it was at Camp Pendleton, and the Marine Corps, or the organization that did it, which works with the Marine Corps, would pay for it. So off I went to that thing, had my head buzzed, show up, and I realized it's all kids who are court ordered. It's juvenile hall or that, or kids like myself who heard it was a free summer camp and had never been to summer camp. And the next 10 days, the organization's called Devil Pups. The nonprofit is still around. For the next 10 days, I got not literally, but beat into shape. And by the end of that, I said, I definitely want to join the Marine Corps. I definitely want to join the military, but I need to go to college first because I want to be an officer, even though I had no idea what that meant. And then finished that program, went to UC San Diego, and then from there, joined the Marine Corps as an infantry officer.
Got it. So tell us a little bit more about that camp. What did they make you do?
Great questions. I remember I've always been long and skinny, so I remember running I was good at. So we do these long runs down these dusty Camp Pendleton gravel roads. And then there was a lot of climbing of hills.
Okay. Do you have to get wet and sandy?
We did.
Yeah.
It wasn't like SEAL training where you're doing sugar cookies, we're going in the sand and the water and going back and forth. But I will say my cold water training in the bathtub probably did help me a little bit for getting in the water. But yeah, so a lot of physical pain there, which was good. Like that's where grit started to, I don't want to say it developed there, but it got refined there.
Yeah.
Because you had all my peers there from different walks of life, a lot of them inner city in California. And we're all climbing mountains together on hands and knees because we're going up what are called tank trails, which are literally trails in Camp Pendleton. Tanks will drive up these steep hills. And we're on hands and knees because they're so steep. And all I can think about is, well, I don't want to quit on these people. And I don't even really know them, but they're not quitting on me, so I can't do that to them.
Right.
And that grit mindset started to build that I need a goal and I need to just keep going until I hit it.
And what made you decide you wanted to be an officer through that? You said you learned then that's what you wanted to do.
I think some of my instructors in that 10-day period kept saying that if they would do it over again, they would go officers.
Okay.
And I think it just biased me toward, if these are the experts and they're telling me there's a different way I should go and I haven't even started the journey, I should probably take their advice.
And was there any history of military service in your family?
My going way back, I forget the exact tie, but he's in like the family like picture book.
Yeah.
The first guy killed in the Spanish-American War, last name of Colby, is from our family, which is, I guess, not the greatest thing, the first dude to die, but yeah. We had one of Custer's bodyguards was from our family. And then after that, jumps a few generations until we get to World War II. Then both my grandfather served, my great uncle served in the 101st. And then I think I had one second cousin, however that works, in Vietnam. But between World War II and my generation, really no one served. And then in my generation, I served in the Marine Corps first and then the Army. And one of my younger brothers served in the Marine Corps as well. But to answer your question, there sporadic military service, but not a lineage really that you could trace until we hit kind of World War II and then jumped to my generation.
Got it. So you went to school, started in the Marines. Tell us what that experience was like going through Marine Corps Basic and then...
Yeah. For years, the coldest and the hottest I'd ever been was Marine Corps training.
Yeah.
It was
I know a lot of guys that washed out of it that I went to school with.
Yeah. It was the hardest initial wake-up call of my life.
Yeah.
Because I get there, I'm decently fit. I'm a good runner. But I have no real frame of reference for what this is going to be other than the 10 days in Marine Corps, or not Marine Corps, in Devil Pups, which was Marine Corps-esque training. And then I show up at boot camp and right away, and I'll call it boot camp, but the technical term is OCS, Officer Candidate School. That's how you call officers, but boot camp is what you call enlisted, but you might as well use the same term. So I show up for Officer Boot Camp, OCS, in Quantico, Virginia in January 2012. And I've just come from living in Southern California for a few years. So I am not acclimatized to the cold. The base sits right next to the Potomac and the breeze comes off it. And I just remember getting so cold and it's constant physical activity. It's difficult. To this day, I still have loss of feeling in a lot of these fingers because every morning we'd wake up, we'd grab our rifle, we'd walk the mile across the bridge to the chow hall, put down our rifle in these little stacks, eat our meal, come out. And in that short amount of time we ate the meal, the weapons would kind of ice over. Huh. And we weren't allowed to wear gloves because that's soft and not good discipline. So then you're carrying your rifle back the mile to the back to your barracks and your fingers are just freezing to this metal. So some physical pain, but then also the continuation of that grit mindset. There's an event there that's famous. It's called the Quigley. and they took this concrete cylinder that's maybe 4 feet wide in the middle, and they submerge it below water. It's not far, maybe 6 inches below water. And it's, again, maybe, I forget if it's 4 or 6 feet, somewhere in there long. And you're going through this water obstacle course, and you get to it, and you have your little kit belt on, and you have your canteens that are making you wider, and you submerge yourself, and you start on your back shuffling through this pipe. And at some point, you're likely going to get stuck. And it's just to teach you that in life, you will get stuck, and you will feel all the human reactions to pending, death. You're not going to die there, but that can feel like a response. Right. And if you hold your breath, stay calm, and keep moving, you're going to be okay.
Yeah. How long do you have to stay submerged for in this part of this?
It's just how long it takes to get you through.
Yeah.
In reality, it felt like forever, but it was probably somewhere between 10 and 15 seconds,
Okay.
maybe 20, but nothing crazy. And I remember it was that training that day where I saw so many people getting hypothermia, getting taken to the heating tents. And I realized this is a real endeavor. If I'm going to succeed in this lifestyle, I have to condition myself to look at adversity as something that is almost welcome, and to move through it. Because there are so many instances like that where it's just, you're cold, you're miserable, you're wet. I remember there was a small trench they had dug, filled with water and overlaid barbed wire about 6 inches above the trench. And you have to get in on your back and slide in so that you're underneath the barbed wire. And this is sub-freezing temperature. They often, for winter classes, have to go out and break the ice on this little trench. And you're on your back with barbed wire here, and you're sliding through. And then if you react and the human response is to get out of the freezing water, you can't, because you'll hit the barbed wire. So you stay there with your lips just out of the water, breathing. And that was maybe a 30 or 40 foot trench, which isn't a lot, but it takes a few good minutes, slowly inching back to get through.
40 degree or 30 degree weather.
Yeah. I was 20s that day. It was 20 something. Yeah.
Wow.
But you asked physical things that I remember from that training. A lot of cold. It was a January class.
Was there any point in time where you're like, I'm out on this? That you had to really talk yourself back into it?
No, not for that training. I'm trying to think back. It's been a long time since I really dove into thinking about that. Not for that. Because there were people quitting throughout. But I've always been driven. They say the Marine Corps is a shame culture. And people think of that negatively at first. And they're like, oh, they're creating shame. No, it's in the sense that it's self-driven, that you don't want to bring shame on yourself or the organization. And you definitely don't want people thinking you're weak or that you can't do the job. So they call it drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Like a true believer. I was definitely a true believer in the Marine Corps, and that there was a reason I was there and there was a purpose I was serving. So pardon me for that training. No point where I went, this is too hard. Because I knew people who had made it through.
Yeah.
And I was like, if they can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk about, you spent 6 years in the Marines after you got through that. Can you share with us, any interesting, challenging experiences that you went through during that time? I definitely want to save time for you to talk about your time as an operator, but
I can tell you. Actually, I don't think I've ever talked about this story to maybe other than my wife. There was a time where I almost got a bunch of people killed, and it's a good learning lesson.
Yeah.
I was in Guatemala. I've done multiple deployments to Central America. I was in Guatemala as an infantry officer. I had a small team of Marines that me and them, we were working with the Guatemalan Marine Corps, which I think was only 6 years old at that time.
Okay.
And we were teaching him shoot, move, communicate, medicate, the basics of infantry work.
Right.
And they would take that training, and then they would go out and fight the local narcos in the area where we were. We weren't allowed to accompany them, but we could train them. And on one of the kind of when you're going through military training, we have validation exercises where at the end of your training, we'll go do like a war game.
Okay.
And we put them in all these different scenarios that they should be able to coordinate their way through, just to see how the training went, kind of so that we can grade them. And it's to set the scene. I think it was 2 a.m. in the jungle in Guatemala. Deep jungle. I have a small little cell phone that's supposed to reach back to base. But it doesn't reach. And what our mission was, take these 30 Guatemalan Marines and go do this long patrol through a jungle trail, and then eventually get to this small compound back on the base where some role players were, and then attack them, grade their strategies.
Okay.
Pretty cut and dry.
Yeah.
You know, and the trail through the jungle was well marked, so it's not like they had to do land navigation. It's very very Barney style, we'd call it. It's very, you know, paint by the numbers.
So it should have been a walk in the park.
Should have been a walk in the jungle. Yeah. And as we're going through this trail, dissecting or bisecting the trail is this compound that exists over there. I don't know what was on it. I wasn't in special operations at this time, but that compound always had armed guards, Guatemalan military armed guards, and they never talk about what happened on that compound. So as we're going through this trail, the jungle trail goes right in front of the sentry route on this guarded place. And those sentries always had armed weapons. And as our trail is ending, I have the realization that I haven't coordinated with the sentries. All they're going to see is people in camouflage paint with weapons sneaking out of the jungle at 2 a.m. They have no idea that this is a simulated war game. All they know is this is a real thing, and they're going to return fire. So I pause our Guatemalan forces and our U.S. Marines. I get on my cell phone. I try and call back to my commander to notify the base commander. Can't get through. And then it becomes a real, well, we can walk the 4 hours back through the jungle, or we can turn this into a real event. And every time the sentry patrol is past, I can send 1 or 2 guys across this 40-meter gap that's lit by a searchlight, and we can do this for real, which could be very bad if, if shots are fired. So that's what I did. I started phasing people across, and I think it took us like 35 minutes to get everyone across safely, and we did. And then we continued on, got to the fake village, hit the targets, and it worked out. But that was a scenario where it could have gone very bad. Yeah. And to this day, looking back, I'm like, it might have been wiser to do the long ruck back than just send guys into actual harm's way.
Yeah. So what's the takeaway from all that?
The takeaway is planning.
Yeah.
Actually sit with your team. At that point, I was the one who came up with the brilliant idea, and I didn't run it by my team to say, hey, punch holes in this, figure out where this idea could fail, and actually let's do this collaboratively instead of just me as the officer saying, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
So the takeaway was bring the whole team in, get team buy-in, because it's a lot smarter with, 5 guys than with 1 guy. And then be open to alternative ideas when you're in the scenario. Yeah. I don't, as the officer, I don't have to be the only one coming up with good ideas to send people into harm's way. I can listen to my advisors and learn from them.
Gotcha.
That was the big takeaway.
Well, I'm glad everybody was okay. Yeah. That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So
wild times.
So you had 6 years in the Marines. What made you decide you wanted to go then the Special Forces route? And tell us about that decision and what that looked like.
Yeah. I'm sure I'll get a lot of flack from the Green Beret community, but that childhood dream of being a SEAL was still there.
Yeah.
So after getting back from deployments, some back-to-back deployments with the Corps, I wanted to go into special operations. And I didn't know anybody in the SEAL teams, but you always hear good things about them. So I put in an inter-service transfer to leave the Marine Corps and go over to the SEALs. Did my PT test, had good numbers there, and then the board met, and the board looks at all the different packages, and they make a decision on whether or not you can switch over or not. And then if you switch over, they'll get you a shot at buds.
Gotcha.
For me, I had promoted to 03 captain 1 month before the board. So when the board met, they were like, dude, you're too senior. And I had heard of Marines being dropped in rank by the SEAL command or by the Navy so that they could go to buds. So I pitched that case and I was like, please let me in. And they're like, thankfully the board was honest. They're like, look, dude, you've got deployments, but you've got no combat. So let's be honest, it's easier for us to take an officer off the street or out of one of the academies and push him through buds than do all the paperwork, rigmarole it's going to take to have you come over. So they're like, at this time, you're a no-go. I was like, roger that. So then I was like, all right, I'm going to go to Marine Recon because I was still in the Corps. And then one of my buddies had just gone through basic reconnaissance course, BRC. And he said, hey, it's great training, but we're not getting used on deployments. Don't come here. And then one of my Marines said, hey, sir, I'm going to go do this tryout with the National Guard Special Forces. It's just down the road. How about you just show up and do this with me? And I had always thought of as a Green Berets as just trainers overseas. I had never looked into what they did. I never read a book on them. I knew nothing about them. And I just had this bias, oh, they're just overseas trainers. I was like, yeah, but I like working out. I'll show up. And I showed up to the tryout and I just horribly failed. Just so bad. The first event was push-ups and I did one under the minimum to continue to the next event. And they cut me right there. And that was a wake-up call. I was like, I showed up. I didn't even know what they were going to do. I didn't prepare well and I instantly failed. And it made the Corps look bad because I was wearing Marine Corps green t-shirt and PT shorts. So they clearly knew I was a Marine. And that's why I ended up in the Green Berets, because it was the first soft element that I said, I think I want to do this, and I failed. And I've always been driven by failure. It's always been a challenge to me when I try something and I fail and I go, oh, I'm not as good as I thought I was. I'm going to have to take a step back and actually attack this the right way with proper planning. Because in the Marine Corps, I went through a lot of different schools and training. I have multiple MOSs, job titles in the Marine Corps. It's military occupational specialty, but it just means job. I have multiple job titles in the Marine Corps. And I never failed anything. And then first thing I tried in the Army, failed the very first thing, the first event. So that's, I think, that's what attracted me to the Army. I went, oh, I can fail things and nothing's promised. And I have to earn this. So that's why then I went down the Green Beret path.
And how long did it take you before you tried again?
Deployments come up between that one. So I tried out initially in 2015. And then it would have been 2018 when I went back, because I had deployments in the middle of that. And I made it through that tryout. But when you're coming into Special Forces in the National Guard, the unit holds their own tryout. And when you pass that, all that means is now you get to be on their training team. And eventually you get to go to the actual tryout at Fort Bragg at Camp McCall. So it's just a tryout before the big tryout. Because that tryout I did was only a day long, whereas Camp McCall is 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little longer now because they do some sort of pre-training in land navigation.
Yeah, you said that you didn't really know what Green Berets do. Do you mind sharing what you can about what Berets do for our country?
Of course. Yeah, Green Berets have many different skill sets. The one that often gets the most media attention is direct action. That's where you see them kitted up, bursting in a door, going after a bad target. Or rescuing somebody, although rescue operations are typically other special operations units who do that. But we also do special reconnaissance. That's where you're behind enemy lines and you're doing deep level reconnaissance on the enemy. We also do irregular warfare. And that's often what Green Berets in the press get the most attention for outside of direct action. And irregular warfare that's jumping on a horseback in Afghanistan, working with the tribal leaders and the agency. Working together to build a cohort of people who can take the battle to the Taliban early on in the war.
So working with our friends and whatever corner of the world may be to get them prepared to fight.
Very much so.
The common enemy.
It's finding people who care about protecting their country and then building them up into a viable force, and then with them partnering to fight whoever the adversary is in that area.
Got it. Sounds like you had to have a lot of grit and perseverance to get through multiple rounds in getting into the National Guard Berets and then ultimately the beret training, right?
Yeah.
So, in your experience doing that, what would you say has been the most challenging story or time you've had to overcome?
So I was not one of the lucky guys and gals who go through Green Beret training selection, we call it, the first time. I was a 3-attempt person. So first time got lost at land nav, my own fault. Second time, I got injured. I got rhabdomyolysis, which is where your body breaks down, your kidneys and liver getting flooded with all this protein because your body's literally consuming the muscle to try and get fuel. Again, my fault for not eating my MREs because I was supposed to focus on the task, but that's my issue. It wasn't, the cadre did a great job. But part of that, while my muscles were broken down, I was underneath a log for a bunch of hours because we're carrying it. And because I was just focused on the task, I wasn't paying attention to my body. And that's not paying attention. I was carrying the log directly on my neck instead of lower down on your ruck like you're supposed to, because I was just focused. And that turned into a major wing scapula injury. I kind of looked like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, where this side of my shoulder was just pushed way back, and I couldn't lift my left hand above kind of my middle chest line. pardon me. And that was interesting, because then I had to go to the hospital, and then I was in physical therapy for months. At the same time, because I'd been twice, the Army said, hey, you can't come back a third time. And not the overall Army, it was Special Operations Command said, you've been here twice, both times you've gone through, because when I was injured under the log, I refused to quit. They couldn't drop me for medical reasons. I just didn't meet the standard. And if you don't meet the standard twice, you can't come back unless you get a waiver. So that year was really tough, because I was going through physical therapy and fighting through the waiver process to just come back a third time. Because for me, it was the first time at selection, I failed land nav. The second time I got injured, a lot of it because I wasn't, hydrating and eating well. And for me, I was like, I never gave the cadre the opportunity to see me all the way through training, to allow them to make the decision, was I good enough? I was like, I've always shortchanged them. And I just want to get to the point where they've had me for the full 3 weeks and they can say, yes, we want them, or yes, we don't. Because if they say they don't want me, they're the experts, I'm fine, I can move on. But I have to keep trying until I know that I've given them that opportunity to make a decision. So that was one of the grittiest years.
What did you say to yourself during that time? I mean, you keep at it. Where do you think that drive comes from?
For me, a lot of it's God, personally. Yeah. I would go in prayer, and every time I'd be like, is this something you want me to do? I just feel inside of me like, just push, just go. Because I told myself, and my wife would ask too, she's like, is this the right thing? And I'd say, I think so. And I remember my brothers, because I got 5 brothers, they're really caring about me and saying, hey, you're really physically broken. You sure this is the smart, right thing you want to pursue? And I was also older than a lot of the peers I was going through with. And I said, yeah, I really think this is it. But to answer your question specifically, every time I prayed, I would just get this gut reaction. This is what you're meant to do. Yeah. Go forward until you're told no.
Yeah. So you just keep listening to it.
And it came to the wire. The Army, because I was a senior captain, the Army came down and said, September, I forget the year, but September of that year, they're like, if you have not received your waiver by September 30th, we're going to have to take you out of special operations, actually it was the National Guard, and put you into a conventional infantry unit, because you'll be so far behind your peers, you won't be able to promote into the next rank, because you'll have missed all this time. And I think it was 7 days before that deadline was when the waiver came back signed, and they said, and you're good to go to selection in, I think it was 2 months from then. And I'd been, after physical therapy, I was so broken. Normally we're carrying 65 pounds plus rucks. And after 2 months of physical therapy, I could finally walk around with a 10 pounds dumbbell in a little Jansport pack, not even my military ruck, for 5 minutes before that wore out my shoulder. And then it was months of building up. So it was a tough year. It was a really tough year. And knowing that I was because I was National Guard, I had a civilian job. I was a senior consultant for a consulting firm. And knowing that job was kind of on hold because they were waiting to see if I'd be able to go to training. And my wife and I were figuring out, were we going to move from San Diego, where we live, to North Carolina, where the training is? So it was so many balls in the air, and just a lot of just buckling down and saying, well, for me, actually, grit comes down to 2 things.
Yeah, I was going to ask your definition, as I always do. So you beat me to it.
Yeah, grit for me is, what's your goal and what are you willing to do to get there? Yeah. And for me, the goal was put on the bray so that I can serve at a higher level, because I always wanted to be someone who, when America was in trouble, they could say, who's willing to go? And I could raise my hand and say, I'm willing to go. If it means giving my life, whatever, like I want to do that mission. So that's why grit for me is why that year really defined grit, because I knew what I wanted. I wanted to be a Green Beret, and I knew what it took to get there. And that was moving through physical therapy, getting the waiver signed, and taking 8 months to build up and get physically healthy so I could go back and do this very tough physical training that I'd failed twice before. Yeah. Because I had all the mental baggage of knowing I failed this. And land nav I failed, which is within the first week and a half, and then team week, which is the next week. And I knew I'd failed that. So the first week, every time I'd get back to selection, I got to make it a week and a half. All right, I passed land navigation. And the second time, I made it a week further and got injured. So the third time is like, don't think about the last 2 days of selection. Think about, don't get caught in your pride and say, I've already done this twice. because you failed it twice. You haven't done it. You failed it.
Right.
So for me, it was go back to the beginning and work your way forward. A gritty year, just a painful
And you
year.
ultimately got through.
I did, yeah. Ultimately got through, and I mean, there are a lot of names I could shout out thanks to, but a lot of them are still serving in special operations, so I won't. But it really was a team effort. People calling the schoolhouse on my behalf and vouching for me, and people, coming out to train with me on my ruck routes as I'm rucking with a heavy ruck, as I was able to build up to a heavy ruck to make sure I was, in the right place physically to go back to the schoolhouse.
Well, I'm thankful. I know our listeners are thankful. There are people that are driven like you to put themselves through this to defend our country.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I always say nobody survives this life without scars.
Yeah.
I mean, you have them, I have them, everybody has them. And it's just, were the scars worth it? And did you learn from them? Because we can't always control them. And that's grit, right?
Yeah. Well, as we're kind of wrapping up this episode, is there any other stories you'd like to share, or if no stories, words of wisdom to impart on our listeners?
Gosh, I have so many stories I'm trying to pick between them. Just words of wisdom. Yeah. I'll face the audience, I guess, for that one.
Sure.
In my own life, I wouldn't say I've failed more than I've succeeded at, but I failed a lot. Do not let that define you. Failure is a process of learning to walk, learning to speak. Everything we do as children is tied to failure. And then we become adults and we say, I can't fail anymore. People will judge me. Don't let that be you. Just keep pushing forward. I mean, you failed. I've listened to your podcast, multiple episodes. You failed. Your guests have failed. But the thing that defines you, and that in some small detail defines me, is moving through the failure.
Yeah.
It's just continuing to move forward. So whatever you face in life, don't let that define you. You get to define you. You may come through from a very bad background. They say in special operations, almost all operators come from family trauma. I was fortunate in my own case to escape a lot of that. But nobody leaves life without scars. Do not let your scars define you. Learn from them and just push. Yeah. Whatever you want, just push for it. 3 sayings I learned, I think I attribute them all to Ranger School when I went through. And I went through Ranger School at 37 years old, which is not ideal. I remember one of my cadre at one point walked by and he had just kicked out a 34-year-old for not meeting the standard. And I remember hearing him say to another cadre, he's like, nobody who's over the age of 32 should be here. And I'm sitting there at 37 as the platoon sergeant. I'm going, cool, hope they don't ever look at my paperwork and see how old I am. But something I learned there from an instructor is hunt the good things. Life's got a lot of bad things. Hunt the good things and focus on those.
I like that.
And then I saw it written on a wall. I was doing some work recently and I saw some graffiti on a wall in Chicago and it said, until it's done. And I think of that. That's grit. Whatever your goal is, until it's done, just keep doing it.
Yeah, those are very wise words. And I look at failure as an event, not a person.
Yeah,
yeah. So something that happens and you move forward.
It's a moment in time. It's a lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a painful moment in time, and that's all it is. And it doesn't have to be painful. We just interpret it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your story, sharing words of wisdom with us,
yeah, of course.
Defending our country so that we can all do what we do. And for our listeners out there, hopefully you took some great things away from Nate's talk. Put a link to SOAA. It's a great cause that I support, and hopefully you can check it out. And until next week's episode of The Grit Mindset, this is your host, Matt Rosen, signing off. Stay gritty out there.